In Islam, he was watching a movie called The Kingdom of Heaven. It reminded him of something he knew back, that Islamic warriors always have a headband to say in the name of Allah, and also a shadaharan, a band on their right arm. That's a symbol of an Islamic warrior. And in the movie, they were faithful to that. That's what reminded him of that. And that's what caused him to start connecting something here. The shadaharan is a declaration of allegiance to Allah and Muhammad, and it's worn by millions on their forehead and their right arm. Interesting. And it's in the Greek. It shows up there too. Moving on here. The number of his name, multitude, there's a question mark here. Let's go back and take a look at this verse, verse 18 of Revelation 13. Here's wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. Now, the word wisdom is pretty straightforward. That's Sophia, wisdom, full of intelligence, just what we think it means. But the word count in English is actually the Greek word thethiso, which is to count or reckon or decide by voting. It's to reckon it, okay? All right, that's close, but might be a little different. Okay. Then we have this word arithmos, which is in this verse 3 times. What does that mean in the Greek? It can mean one of 2 things. Arithmos can mean a specific number. It also can mean an indefinite number, such as a number of people came over last night. How many? Don't know. A number. In other words, an indefinite number. It's used that way in the Greek, or it's used as a precise number. Either way. Okay. Now, man is straightforward. That's anthropos. That's a man, a human being, in other words. Okay. And then his number is 666. And that could be those 3 Greek letters. It might be something else. Now, let's take a look at the manuscripts. At the Oxythacus papyri, if you look closely at the 3rd line, you see those, what apparently are 3 Greek letters, and that gives rise to the translation that we have got in the English, with a 666. You with me so far? However, it turns out that, that's the way you see it there. If you take a look at the, there we go, Codex Vaticanus, if you look at that more closely, Walid suggests the possibility, those aren't Greek letters at all. They may be Arabic letters. He would argue that the manuscript says John wrote what he saw. And he may have not written, he may wrote down things that we've assumed were Greek letters that are not. Now you need to understand all languages flow towards Jerusalem. All nations east of Jerusalem go from right to left. Not only Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, Sanskrit, you name it. All nations west of Jerusalem go from left to right. Obviously Latin and all its derivatives, English, German, what have you. Greek, Cyrillic, go from left to right. If that's Arabic, it doesn't go left to right, it goes right to left. And it's Walid that suggests a valid interpretation of that, if it's Arabic, would be Bism Allah. That's the right, the starting from the right hand, the first 2 letters would be Bism Allah. What looks like an X to us could be 2 crossed swords, which is the traditional insignia of Islam. And so he suggests the possibility that this, now some people say, well, that one is up at an angle. It's that way on their flag of Iraq, by the way, at an angle. So I wouldn't make a thing of that. And so the point is, the possibility that if this is Arabic, the sign that's being talked about is in the name of Allah, the very thing that Islamic warriors wear on their forehead and on their right arm when they go into battle. Now, if you look at the various renderings of this, you turn that little signal on its belly and it looks like a serpent. How interesting. I wouldn't make too much of that. I just think it's interesting, so I'm showing it to you. Now let's take, anyway, let's read the way Revelation 13:18 could be translated, not necessarily, but it could allow the following translation. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding decide who the multitude of the beast is. For it is the multitude of a man, in other words, Muhammad, and his multitude are in the name of Allah. Interesting possibility. Don't misunderstand Walid or myself. Walid's a good friend. I respect him profoundly, not only as a practitioner, but also as a scholar. He does his homework. And he doesn't sell this. He just points out as a possibility. We won't really know until we could get a much better rendering from some of the manuscripts to get a clearer perspective. But it certainly appears to be a possibility that's been overlooked. And so I share it with you in that regard. And by the way, not only Wally Shabbat, Joel Richardson and others have picked up on this whole thing.